Hey everybody, it's Camera Work Podcast. This is John Ricard. I'm a New York-based portrait photographer, and with me is Ray Tamarra.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for listening. Ray Tamarra, working photographer in New York.
Right. So this is number 11, and we did number 10 2 weeks ago. We took a week off, and I thought number 10 was a really interesting episode for me personally, because we had a guest on, a guy named Kevin Turner, who has a tremendous Instagram following, and much of the conversation was about Instagram and like this social network and how to build, like a following on Instagram. Although we didn't talk enough about how to build a following, but we just talked about different ways of using Instagram. So I said to him that I was going to change my feed so that I was following more people who take good photographs. As prior to that, what I would normally do is I would follow people that I meet in my daily life. Because I think that's kind of interesting. Like I meet someone on a shoot for like an hour, and then I follow them and I kind of know their ongoing story for the next year or 2 years. That's what I was following. So I changed it up, and what I did was I started following a whole bunch of people that Kevin follows. I figured, well, I don't know, he's following people who are good photographers. Let me start there. So I did that, and I dropped a ton of people, started following a whole bunch of people that he follows, and it's been sort of like mixed for me. It's kind of mixed because I don't like a lot of the photos that I'm seeing still. Now, have you gone to Instagram at all since the last time we spoke about it? No. Okay. But like he follows a lot of people who call themselves street photographers. And they kind of fit a different definition of street photography than my own personal definition. Because to me, street photography is about capturing the people. But a lot of the people that he follows seem to capture like the roads and like the subway tracks and the city and the streets. And I don't find it that interesting. To me, it's more interesting to get the people. So, I think I probably just need to do more work and find my own people that I like what they shoot. But, the idea of standing here going through 7 billion Instagram photographers to find the 12 who I like, it just doesn't sound like something I really want to sit and do.
Yeah, no, there's something, when you said your people, there's a book that I read, I think it's called The Element by Kevin Robinson, and he talks about finding your tribe, people that resonate and that you feel inspired by. So that sounds like what you're trying to do is trying to find your tribe of photographers, of image makers, of creative people, so that you can all inspire each other by the work that you do.
Right. Well, I tried to cheat it and take the easy way and just go, I'm just going to follow who you follow because you're saying you're following good photographers rather than finding people who really resonate with me.
But that's the shortcut that's not going to work because
right.
His definition of good photography is different from yours, and you're very opinionated. So the stuff that you think, you in a not PC podcast, you'd probably bash all those people and say that they suck and then all that other stuff. Yeah. And it's not real photography, but it's not correct because it's not your photography.
Right. You know me very well. Right. And yeah, I torture my wife because I use this thing called Statagram, and it's an Instagram viewer that you can use on your computer. You can do it on Instagram.com as well, but I use Statagram. And I got the 27-inch iMac, and I've got these shots blown up to 27 inches. And like you said, I'm screaming at my wife going like, look at this picture. How did it get 4,000 likes or 200 likes? It's just, some lines receding in the distance, or it's just some train tracks. I don't get it. And and if I weren't being so nice on the podcast, I'd probably be doing that right here and now. So you're correct. And I am, like you said, very opinionated and very like this is good and this is bad. But, it's all good in the sense that I don't think it really hurts anybody. It's just in fun. It's just Instagram. So I think it works.
At the end of the day, it defines your creative vision. So it's absolutely right for you. What you can't say is that it applies to everyone else, because then you're wrong.
Right.
What you're talking about, like I don't watch it. What I like is just stuff that I like, and I don't care if other people like it or not. Because it's not for other people, it's for me.
Yeah, but the thing that I find, like I mentioned before, I started doing this app called 1 Second Every Day. You shoot 1 second video every day. And I do that. And I look at that as a very personal thing. When I'm creating those clips, all I think about is what do I want to remember. And I don't think of the audience who's going to see it. Even though I did post one for March 2013 on YouTube. And I'll probably put it up every month anyway. But I don't care if anybody likes it. Instagram is a little different. I look at it as it is a social thing where you are looking at, does anyone, am I resonating with the people? Am I connecting with people through my photography? And as artists, we all want someone to respond to what we do. That's always important to us. So with Instagram, it does bother me if it's not connecting with people. I do want it to connect with people, and it bothers me too. Like you said, if I'm looking at work that I don't particularly like and it's connecting to people, then I'm just confused. It's like looking at like a pop artist who's selling music and you're like, yeah, but that guy sucks, and you can't understand why it's selling records. That's how I get. It doesn't make sense, but that's just how I get.
I mean, it's just like what we were talking about earlier. You're trying to find your tribe. Well, I mean, there is a people that will that like your stuff, and they'll eventually find you. And you just got to be. You have faith that there are people out there that is your audience, and that you're trying to connect with them somehow, some way, and you're using the steps, and you're succeeding and failing, but you're still committed to find those people.
Right. And we're going to get Kevin back because I want to talk to him more about how he built up his following. And then, like I said, what I really want to do with Kevin is I want to have him come into a podcast for, like, say, half an hour. Then we're going to go out and shoot for the whole day. Hopefully you'll come as well. And then we'll come back and do the second part of the same podcast and just talk about what the experience was like, because he organizes these, photo groups of people out there shooting. So I want to do one of those with him. And I think it'll be interesting to talk about, like, what rules do you have for photography versus my rules? And I know I have these rules, and some people probably don't have rules at all, but we're going to discuss that next time. And I think it could be interesting, right? But did you shoot anything interesting in the last week or so?
This week, the weather has been good. I've definitely been shooting more. I've been doing a lot of the hotels and also trying to rehab, because rehabs in the sense that my body was injured. I injured my shoulder during jiu-jitsu, and I couldn't physically pick up a camera. So
right. And let me just cut you off really quick 1 second. So when we say jiu-jitsu, we mean almost like wrestling. But we're doing, because we both trained, it's kind of like college wrestling.
Right.
So you've got guys that are like trying to separate your arm from its socket. They're trying to choke you. They're trying to twist your knee in directions it was not meant to be twisted, right? So what happened to you in class that injured you?
I was thrown. I was swept off of my feet, and I landed on my shoulder. The shoulder collapsed, and I knew immediately that it was injured. And during the rest, like immediately afterward, it was frozen, so I couldn't physically move it. And for the last month and a half, I've been rehabbing it, trying to figure out exercises so that I can get the range of motion back, doing acupuncture. What's fascinating is that I think that the injury was a godsend, a blessing, because it allowed me to realize just how important my body is to photography and what I have to do to make sure that it's right. I was telling you about like doing the rehab, and then also I'm very anal about my equipment. I want the best equipment, and I want to maintain it. I'm very hard on my equipment because I use it every day. And I told you about going to Phototech, which is a local camera repair shop, and getting my sensors clean, and being really diligent about making sure that the sensor is clean, that the equipment is in top shape. But once I dropped off the camera, I'd go to the corner store and start to buy potato chips and soda, and just really
you like Coke, and you like that big like 99-cent bag of chips, not the 25-cent bag.
And I can eat like 4 bags of chips. I can eat like 4 liters of Coke, 6 or 8 liters. I just didn't care, because my metabolism, I took my body for granted, and I would just eat bad stuff. But then this injury where I couldn't even physically hold the camera for a minute because I couldn't move my shoulder, and the weight of the camera, it's like a 9-10 pound object. I just didn't have the strength to do that. So I would always be physical and I would always exercise, but the missing piece was putting junk food and eating bad.
Right.
And
but like you're saying,
food.
you're basically taking better care of the camera than you're taking of your own body.
Yeah.
Which in the long run doesn't work, because whichever element isn't working is going to produce a bad photo. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, because the body is the foundation in my photography. Like if I can't physically use my body, then I can't take pictures and I can't make money.
Right.
So that was the thing. Another thing that I wanted to express is that, like, I've been eating better, I've been living better, but the thing that was really prominent is that there's a working paparazzi photographer. He's probably like 70 years old. He's been working, and he doesn't need to work. He just likes to work.
Right.
But he has Parkinson's disease. And he doesn't take his medication. And finally, his family had to get him off of the street because he wasn't taking care of his body. He was like shaky. He was just it wasn't healthy for him anymore. And to have your livelihood taken because you're not taking care of your body was very telling for me.
Right. You were wondering if you're looking at the ghost of Christmas future when you see that.
And then, I mean, it's so imperative that for me, my type of work is a physical job.
Right, because you're literally on the street. You might be on the street 8 or 9 or 10 hours. You're standing up. You're holding a minimum of what? 2 D4 bodies. You've got a 300 in your bag. You've got a 70 to 200 on one, 24 to 70 on the other. You've got a battery pack for the flash that's connected to the camera, and just other gear as well, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, so
you've got a lot of stuff.
My bag usually weighs 30 pounds, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And also the rehabbing of being able to move my shoulder again, and just to figure out what exercises, what little things I can do to keep my body in shape for the movements that I'm doing, and to also train my body to be quicker, to respond faster. And at the end of the day, it's about making sure that my body moves efficiently. So working out and eating right.
Right. And I find that one of the things I actually like about studio photography versus being on the street, like you're saying, is I always think like, man, like what would happen if I ended up in a wheelchair? I don't know. I get like those crazy thoughts. And I'll think like, man, I wonder if I could still run my studio if I just had like a really good assistant who could shoot what I need her to shoot or him to shoot. And I'm still kind of like mentally directing it, and maybe it would work. But that's one of those things I do like about the studio. And yeah, your body should be in really good shape, even in the sense that you're an image maker, meaning when, as a photographer, you're communicating the idea that how things look is important. Not just what's the real essence of, not just what the core of it is important, but as a photographer, you're shallow in a sense that you're, in my opinion, you're sort of communicating how things look is important. So if you don't look right, there's something kind of out of whack there, because you're implying, doesn't matter how I look, but we're going to make sure the picture of you looks good. Well, it's a little off base there. So I think the staying healthy thing is really good. And I personally don't eat as good as I should. You know, I eat reasonably well, but not as good as I should. But I'm proud at least that I do jujitsu. At least I maintain that. That works my brain in addition to my body, because mentally the jujitsu is so challenging. It's unbelievable. But you're doing, and I do the yoga too. I do the hot yoga once a week, which I don't really enjoy, but I think it's valuable for my body. So I make it once a week. But when I'm in the class, I'm not having fun. I just go, okay, this is valuable. This is going to pay off. But it's not really enjoyable for me. It's like hot and it's so difficult.
No, I mean, for me, it's about physical practice. Like I just get almost in a trance-like state when I'm doing something. So I'm hiking, I'm surfing. Yoga is something that I've recently found that I like. A hot yoga. I did 3 hours yesterday. I did a 1 hour hot yoga and then a 2 hour, it's called rocket yoga workshop. And that's 3 hours of yoga. And then I worked out earlier in the day with kettlebells. So I want to move my body. I want my body to be as on point as possible. But one of the things that I wanted to do was I do that, but again, I ate bad. Now I'm eating better. And what I wanted to share with a couple of people is that there's a documentary, and it's free on Hulu. It's called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And it talks about how Americans are overweight, or just people in general are overweight, and they eat bad, they eat processed food. Now, I'm not trying to promote that. I'm just thinking, look at it and see if it makes sense to change your diet.
Fat, sick, and nearly dead.
Fat, sick, and nearly dead. And it just talks about one man who went on a fast diet, vegetable fast diet, basically eating more fruits and vegetables and eliminating some of the processed food, fast food, etc., and how that changed his life. And there's a one man who was weighing like 430 pounds, and then he lost 200 pounds.
Right.
And that's
cool.
important.
Right.
That's very important.
Well, I'll say this as we wrap up this particular topic, that at least New York has gotten a lot better. Like, there was a time 10 years ago where like they was flooded with these Greek diners, and you'd walk in and really the only thing you could get was like a cheeseburger deluxe and Coke. Like that was the standard meal, and it was garbage. And nowadays you have a lot of these like more modern style delis when you walk in and everything is behind glass. You can see the food, and they've got like the spinach salads are huge now in New York, where you go and you get the bowl with the spinach and the Caesar dressing, and you tell them put some chicken in it and broccoli and zucchini, and all the items that you're selecting to go into that salad are right there in front of you, and you can see that they're all fresh, and a lot of stir fry, and it's just the food has gotten way better in New York. It's not even 10 years, it's like 3 years. It's just gotten so much better. So I think it is more possible to eat right now than it was 10 or 20 years ago, when everybody was like smoking cigarettes and all this other nonsense that they've kind of phased out in New York, But on another note, something I think is kind of funny, kind of a mistake that I see a lot of people make that I've never personally made. So I'm curious if you ever make this mistake. I find that as freelancers, like one of our dreams is to get a steady or semi-steady gig. Because as a freelancer, I mean, you're completely up in the air. Like a wedding photographer could have their entire year booked. Like there are wedding photographers right now who have 2015 booked solid every weekend. And as a freelancer, it's like Monday and you don't know what you're doing Thursday. It's so up in the air. So when you get a semi-steady gig, like years ago, I used to shoot a lot of TRL through the Film Magic photo agency. They'd send me pretty consistently. And now I'm the house guy for BET. I shoot that regularly. And we all dream of that. But one of the things I think is funny is I find that when a lot of freelance people get the steady gig, they start to like rely on it. And then they stop hustling for the outside gigs. It's almost like they feel, okay, I made it. Like I've got my steady gig, so I'm not hustling. So I'll be at my place. Let's say it's TRL back when I used to shoot that. And I'll see a stylist there or a makeup artist or hair person. I'm like, hey, why don't we do some testing? I have a studio, you come on down, we get some models, whatever. And they're so overwhelmed with their semi-steady gig that they can't work outside projects. And it seems to me to be such a mistake, because as soon as they lose the steady gig, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and they call you and they're like, okay, I'm no longer with TRL. Remember that testing you wanted to do? Okay, let's go get some models and do some hair shoots. And I'm thinking like that's kind of a mistake, because when you had the steady gig, that was the best time to be doing your outside work, because you had this position. You could say to people, I'm the TRL hair guy. You were just in a better position of power to make something happen, rather than like, I'm the ex-TRL guy and I'm trying to make something happen. But I just see people get very comfortable as soon as they get like a little slice of the pie and they don't hustle. And I think it's a huge mistake, and I'm proud to say I've never made that particular mistake.
No, I mean, I think that everyone makes mistakes. Something similar. I think that people get comfortable, and when you get comfortable, you just don't want to work as hard. I know that when I used to do paparazzi, I used to be out a lot. I used to work in the evenings, and now I don't work in the evenings, and I don't want to work in the evenings. I think that it's inherently it's inherent in your nature or to work to do less work, to try to do it smarter, and to figure out what you can cut. And sometimes that initiative, you lose that initiative. One of the things that I've read is a book. It's another book. It's called "Who Moved My Cheese," and it basically promotes being able to adapt, being able to change when something right doesn't happen, and not complaining and not whining about it, not being a victim, but just being proactive. If a change is coming, then figuring out what's the best for me, and then moving with the cheese so that you can compensate and be in a better place.
Right. And another thing I think you can do is you can look at it. You can almost predict that if you're a freelancer, like unless you're in a union or you're working for like an educational institution that gives you tenure, if you're a freelancer, you should assume at some point the steady gig's going to end. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm the house guy at BET 106 in Park. I shoot every episode of this music countdown show. I don't look at that. I don't ever think I'm going to be doing that like when I'm 60. I just assume at any moment it's going to end and I'm going to be fine. And you should be preparing for that. You should think like when you have the steady gig as a freelance, you should be thinking like I'm in summer. I'm in the summer period. Like things are going good. I don't have to hustle as much in the sense that I do have a steady gig, kind of steady check is coming in. But during summer, you should be expecting that winter is going to come. And when that winter comes, you better be prepared for it. And the time to prepare for winter is not in winter. You should be preparing during summertime. So while you have that steady gig, that's really the best time to be trying to make new connections and develop your own outside work. So at the moment you lose the steady gig, you're like, bam, I got a new book, new body of work ready to show people, and let me move to another chapter.
Right.
You know, that's really the way it is. But it just always makes me laugh when I get the phone call. And that's really why I brought this up, is when I get that phone call and a person's like, hey, it's me, and I'm no longer at, David Letterman. So now let's put together some shoots. And I always accept it. Like, I don't have any kind of bitterness or anger or resentment. I'm not the guy who's going to go, well, no, she didn't do it when I suggested. So no, I'm not like that. I'm like, great, let's start. But I still look at them and I say to myself, that's kind of a mistake on their part. They really should have made this happen while they had the gig. And you could say, I'm the David Letterman, whatever, green room coordinator, and I'm trying to set up a photo shoot on my own. You're just in a better position of power. So
right.
I think you, as a freelancer, don't get comfortable. Keep hustling.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really the key. So I had one other thing I thought was mildly interesting. So I had my assistant Medina on a few weeks ago, and we may get her back at some point. So I decided to switch her over from Final Cut Pro, I guess 7 it was or something, to Final Cut. I don't know if it's called X. No, I guess it was Final Cut 9.
No, it's Final Cut X.
Right. Okay. I don't know. I never know if it's X or if it's 10, but Final Cut X, which I personally absolutely love the program. And because I get sometimes a little bit, like you said earlier, like not PC correct, and I know she's editing on the old Final Cut Pro, and I'm just like, you need to move to Final Cut X. Even though like she edits in her own house, I'm not there when she edits, but she edits for me. She edits my videos for me. So I'm just like, you have to be on Final Cut X because I'm on Final Cut X and it's the best program. So you need to be on this program, which again, it's kind of stupid in a way, because what do I care as long as she gets the job done? But I just get that way, like, no, you should be on it. So I signed her up for this, what is it, Linda or My Linda? It's
Lynda, LYNDA.com. It's an online database of tutorials for software, for just everything. It's absolutely fabulous, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's the membership is $25 a month, or like $360 or something like that, $300 for the year. And there's such valuable information. So if you want to teach yourself Photoshop, if you want to teach yourself Final Cut Pro, if you want to teach yourself Quicken, QuickBooks, etc. Like there's a whole bunch of these 3D software and Acrobat
it has
music.
Everything on there.
And it also has like personal improvement, like public speaking, motivation, inspiration. It's definitely a wealth and a very valuable asset for people who want to better
one of the
themselves.
funny things to me is that it's so hard to motivate yourself to do things like that, like you want to sit and watch a tutorial, but it can be so difficult to make yourself do it because you get these distractions in a house. So I was doing a shoot last week. I made her come into the studio and just do the tutorial in the studio. Like she was here and I was working. She wasn't assisting me at all. I just had her sitting at the computer because I'm like, you can get through the 5-hour tutorial here, with no distractions rather than at home. It's going to take you 3 days to do the 5-hour tutorial. So, she knocked it out. She learned it, loved the program. And then like not a week later, like a day later, she texted me like, okay, I've gone back to all these other videos that I've shot for you that weren't edited. And I'm editing all of those now, so she's like, yeah, the diamond shoot, the slaughterhouse shoot, I'm working on those. So I thought that was just great when you see someone get that spark properly of like getting a little, getting one cookie and then wanting to go bake a whole cake, basically. Like I'm introducing you to a new software editing program, and then you look at that and go, hey, this is great. I'm motivated. Let me get out now and edit 10 more pieces of video. So I thought that was great, and I love when I see that type of thing. And I know I get that way. If I buy a new piece of gear or if I learn something, I see like an online tutorial, and I'm like, man, I got to shoot this. And I've called you with a whole bunch of stuff like that. I'll just be like, man, we got to do a music video. We got to do this. And, that type of like positive attitude, I think, is really, really necessary in this business. And again, you don't always see it, but when you see it, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to continue. You have to be committed to improve and committed to recognizing where you're weak at, and understanding that could be something that could bring you down or could slow your roll or stop you from succeeding. Just being in that uncomfortable zone, getting out of your comfort zone and doing something. Like I know that I try to watch those videos, but sometimes it's so hard.
It's so dry.
I mean, the videos are between 2 to 12 minutes, but I even put them on the chipmunk mode where they're going super fast. Like, so they're talking real fast so that I can get through it.
Right.
And then,
but that's a good feature of Linda. What they do is they let you click a button for either 1.5 speed or double speed. And then so if the video clip said it was 12 minutes, it's only 6 minutes now. But it still feels like it's 2 hours every 10 minutes. But it's funny. But again, that's why I said to her, come down to the studio and you're going to do this 5-hour tutorial like in the studio, because I knew she would sit at the computer focused and would not have that ability to now go and go make a sandwich or whatever. But it is difficult.
Everything is so I'm just at a loss for words, but what is great is that we have a body of knowledge that's available to us. With you can either pay for it or YouTube it or etc. So if you want to learn something different, you can Google it and then you can get on that road to learning it. Right. So besides the lynda.com, there is TED Talks. Like I love TED Talks because it expands my horizons. Like there's some stuff they're talking about robots, they're talking about sex, they're talking about building huts in Africa or putting computers in India and how that changes. What's fascinating is there was a TED Talk and there was a guy who put a computer in India for these Indian kids in the countryside. They didn't know English, but after 8 months, they took the initiative. They knew English, and then they also knew how to do some brain type surgery.
That's cool.
So, and there was no other outside input. So you just put something in a person's hand and then let the initiative. But it was crucial that it was kids, because there's not that obstacle of. Right. Like, as an adult, you're not as apt to change your course, your ways.
And it happens to a lot of adults. Fortunately, not all, because for myself, I really haven't had that problem. Mm-hmm. I know I've made a lot of changes, even just like, say, getting that Leica 2 years ago was a huge change for me. I mean, I had this perfect autofocus Nikon camera, and then I went out and bought a Leica that made me manually focus. And I've talked about that camera enough on the podcast, but it imposed all these limitations on me, but it was something totally different. And the funny thing for me in terms of going digital from the time when I was film, used to be with the photo agency called Retina. They were really one of the earliest photo agencies. They were probably around about 10 years before Wire Image. They just never got as famous as Wire Image ultimately became. And when the Nikon D1X came out, I was still on an F5 film camera from Nikon. And I was dying to get this digital camera because it just looked like so much fun. The idea that the mystery of did I get the exposure right would be gone. That fascinated me because when I was shooting slides, it was the most nerve-wracking thing in the world was to do a shoot, put the film in, and man, when you went to open that box of slides, it was, for me, my heart would be racing. And you just kept thinking like you had made one setting wrong, one shutter speed or one aperture setting wrong, and every photo on that roll was going to be blank or it was going to be completely washed off or washed out or whatever. And it never really happened. I mean, you know what you're doing 95% of the time. I nailed it, but I would get scared every single time. So digital, I'm like, oh my God, like you can see the actual photo. You don't need Polaroids and all of this stuff. I was dying to get one. So I went up to the girl who was the woman, I should say, who was the president of Retina, Julie something or other, with the British accent. And I said to her, hey, you know, Nikon just came out with this digital camera. Do you think I should get it? And I'll just never forget. I remember like where I was standing and everything. And she was like a digital camera? What would you do with that? What are you going to do with a digital file? Why would you need that? And I'm just like, I don't know. I just thought, you know, it'd be cool to have the files digital and one day we're going to need them. And she's like, no, you don't need that. And whatever. Didn't buy the D1X. And, you know, it was like another year before I bought my first digital camera, which was actually the cheaper D100, which I hated. Whole nother long story there. But, you know, I've never been resistant to change. I've always wanted to change. Like I was excited to go digital. And there was a lot of photographers who resisted it. A ton of photographers arguing that the quality wasn't there and all this other nonsense, or just didn't want to change their workflow. They figured out how to shoot film. They didn't want to learn a whole new workflow of looking at things on a computer screen. I was so excited and eager to do it. And I know you and I both, in terms of video, which is also something relatively new for us as still photographers, we've both embraced it in a sense of wanting to do it, right? I mean, you personally own two D7000 bodies that we've used for video. You have a Steadicam that we've used for video. You have the proper monopod and the correct sticks, as they call it,
rails,
from Manfrotto. You have a set of rails, all of that. So when video came in, you jumped on that too, because remember, it was really the Vincent Laforet Creative Live that gave us both a ton of information about video. Remember, I think I saw it first and I was like, you have to watch this. Like, here's a guy who finally just broke it down. Like, and I bet he's probably embarrassed by that video now because it's so basic, and like in digital years, that feels like it's 200 years old. But at that moment when Vincent Laforet did that very first Creative Live about digital DSLR video, for guys like you and me who were clueless, it taught us so much. It really, really did. And like I said, we embraced it, but I don't know, for me, the video problem has always just been finding a paycheck has been the problem with it.
I mean, that and finding interesting stories to tell. But at the end of what I've been thinking about and what I was thinking about today is that you have to do something repeatedly. It has to be a physical practice. You have to do it and do it again and do it again and do it again. They say that you master something if you do it 10 years, 8 hours a day. Right. They talk about it in another book called Outliers, where if you're consistently doing it, then you just learn the nuances of what you're doing, right, and you're more efficient with it. Like, I think about video a lot. I remember just being reamed by you and saying that my video was horrible. And that's like, you know, and just taking it to heart and saying, well, okay, if it's horrible, then what will make it better? Right. And
because I would have you shoot behind the scenes at my shoot, and I would just be like, what is this? Like, why is it? And it's funny because a lot of still photographers, you think, well, just pick up video, it's the same thing, but it wasn't. Like, you know how to frame a photograph, but there was a time you would shoot video and it wouldn't be framed right. And I'm like, why aren't you framing the video the way you would frame it as a still shot? And but now you're really good with video, like I said, but I don't know, have you had the same problem I've had, which is, for me, the problem with video is finding the paycheck. Because at the level where you're at the lower level where you can't compete with the big guns because the work just isn't good enough, then you're dealing with a lower level client. They can't You know, in video, like $500 is nothing. It doesn't cover the 2 people you need to assist you that day and the $800 Steadicam and all this other nonsense that you're bringing to the set. So it's like, I always just hit that wall where it's harder for me to make money in video than it is in photography. And that's my wall for video.
I mean, I can understand that, but for me, I don't even think about making money with video because fortunately I can make money other ways and have that subsidize my video pursuits. Like I was thinking about today, I want to take a sabbatical or take time off to go intern or be a PA, a volunteer at a friend of mine's movie so that I can be that much closer to movie making, to filmmaking. Right. And then taking that loss of that month or 2 months or whatever, because that'll set me on the path to being a better filmmaker, being a better storyteller, and just understanding what it takes to make a film. And then just physically doing the work, that practice. Like there's men and women who played basketball all their lives. They never get paid for it until you get good enough, and then you do.
Right.
So I never thought I would get paid for photography, but I am. I never thought I would be. When you approached me to share this studio, I'm like, what? How am I going to do that? I can't, right. What? I don't even know studio photography, but I do know it. Right. And I think that you, again, coming back to just putting yourself in an uncomfortable position and just trying to go after what you want and not being afraid.
And being open-minded. And if you're lucky, if you do have some people that are kind of on your side. And I know for me, you've been extremely helpful to me the past 10 years, whatever I've known you. I've come up to you with a ton of ideas. Hey, I'm going to do YouTube clips, and you've helped film them. And like I said, I'm going to get a studio, man. Why don't you come in and share the studio? And you've been extremely supportive, and particularly like with video, because most of the video stuff I've done has been on your gear. So that has worked really well. So I appreciate the support I've gotten from you. I say that sincerely for the past 10 years, you know, of just being willing to take a chance and know that what I'm asking is coming from the right place, and you being open-minded enough to give it a shot. And some stuff has worked and some hasn't, you know what I mean? But the last thing I wanted to talk about, and you don't know the topic yet, which is good because hopefully we can get a good answer from you on it, but someone had written a question on Twitter to me about what is a decision that I have made in my career that was correct, and what is a decision that I've made that was incorrect. Do you want to start with one of those two, or do you want me to start, or what?
You started.
Okay, so I would say one of the things that I've done right in my career was I always operated as if things were going to go well. And by that I mean, when I got the studio, I didn't get the studio because I was getting so much studio work that I needed my own space. That's really how you should do it if you think about it. You know, let's say you're renting a lot and you're looking at your numbers and you go, well, I'm spending X amount of dollars on rental and it'd be cheaper to have my own place because I'm renting 7 days a week. It was nothing like that. It was going like, I want a studio, and when I get it, I will figure out how to get work in my studio. I had faith that if I had a studio, I would manage to find the clients to pay the rent, and that it would be a smart investment. But I had faith that it would work. You follow what I'm saying? And what I did also was, there was a photographer, Tony Cuttajar, who's a friend and competitor of mine, and we used to shoot a lot of similar content. We both get called in to shoot the same hip-hop music artists, and we were on a trip to shoot on Luke Skywalker in Florida. You know, we talked for like 3 hours. We were on the plane. We're stuck in the airport, all this other stuff. And, you know, you get those deep conversations with people in those long periods of time. And he said to me, you know, you really should have a studio. And prior to that, I never thought of getting a studio because, again, I wasn't getting so much studio work that I needed it. But what I did was I trusted his judgment of me because I believe that it can be hard to see yourself. And if you look in certain types of research, they'll show people have a self-image of themselves that's often wrong. People think they're taller than they are. They think they're shorter than they are. You know, they give a wrong self-image. So my self-image said I should not have a studio. But one of my closest competitors, and a person who I had known even then like 10 or 15 years, I've known Tony now like 20-something years, he could look at me and say, like, this dude should have a studio. He knew where I really was in my career. And I took his advice and I went out and tried to get the studio. So I think that was two things that I did that were correct. One was trusting other people's opinion of me. Sometimes you should value what other people are saying about you positively or negatively. And the other part was having the faith in myself that I could make something work, even if I didn't have a big, perfect roadmap all figured out ahead of time. So I think that's two things that I've done correctly. So what would you say to that question? What is one thing you've done either correctly or incorrectly in your career?
I mean, I think one of the things that I did correctly was fall into photography and then just embrace it. Like, I never thought I was going to be a photographer. I had a point and shoot camera, and it was never a career to me. But when I did start shooting, all these things opened up, and I was committed to being the best I could be at the time that was. So if it meant buying new equipment, if it meant educating myself, if it meant being uncomfortable, if it meant learning and asking for help, I would do it. And that's opened up a lot of options, and I have to revisit that. Like, that's the eye of the tiger. Like, I'm very adaptable, but I can get comfortable. So, like, if photography was taken away from me, I can make money doing anything. Like, I used to clean up horse pens. I used to move furniture. I used to work at UPS. So if I couldn't do photography, I'd figure out something else to do and make money and make a living, and that'd be fine. So that's the thing, that I chose photography, or I fell into photography and I pursued it, and I'm a working photographer and I'm successful. Right. One of the things that I made a mistake on is that being successful, making money, I would try to take shortcuts, and the shortcuts would be investing in real estate, investing in businesses, and those have.
How is that a shortcut, though? What do you mean by that?
Not doing the due diligence, not understanding the market, just having money and just sinking it in and not understanding, is this a good deal or not? And being able to recognize that, because at the end of the day, investments are about numbers. And if the numbers make sense, then it makes sense. If the numbers don't make sense, right, and if you don't understand why it doesn't make sense, then you're just gambling. And that's what I was basically doing. I didn't know what was going on. I trusted other people's opinions, and that led me to all headaches and years years of losing money, but not only losing money, living just living bad because of the worry, because of the just worry, right, basically.
Right. I would say for me, the mistake for me would have been sometimes not pushing hard enough, and it's a weird thing for me, because if things are going well for me, my own personal spin on it, I look at it like I'm not a greedy person, meaning, like, if I say I shot 3 days this week, during the weekdays, I say I shot 3 days, I'm not necessarily dying to go shoot the other 2 days of the week. I'm happy now to go sit on the computer and play on the internet for the day, or read a book, or watch a movie, or play with my daughter, or hang out with my wife, whatever. I'm not that hungry sometimes as maybe would have benefited my career more. So if I had a magazine that gave me an 8-page spread inside the magazine, I haven't necessarily been the guy banging down the door of that editor like, can I get the cover? I'm happy to get the inside, and I'm like, this is great. I'm inside the magazine. And sometimes when I would see people who would do that, it almost looks greedy to me. It's like, well, don't you have enough? Like, you're in the magazine. Difference doesn't make if you're on the cover. But some people are just very driven like that. And again, you and I both train at Marcelo Garcia Jiu-Jitsu, and like, I train twice a week. If I'm lucky and the schedule's open, my schedule's open. I do 3 times a week. We have guys there that train literally twice a day, every day. Like, where we train, if you go to noon class, someone will say to you like, oh, you come in tonight? And I'm looking at them like, I'm here now. If I'm here now, that means you're not going to see me tonight, and you probably are not going to see me tomorrow, because I'm not as hungry with it as some people are. And I think in terms of jiu-jitsu, it's fine. It's just a part-time pursuit that I enjoy. But with the career, sometimes I think that can be a little bit hurtful, that maybe you should get out there and, push a little harder. And I hate to use the word greedy. I don't know what the nicer word would be, but be a little more like, I want more, and a little less content of like, well, I've got this and I'm happy. So I think in terms of mistake, that would probably be my mistake, was certain opportunities in my career where I might have been able to push a little harder to get, the cover of a magazine, or to get 2 spreads in a magazine instead of 1, or something along that line. I don't think I've always pursued that because I was content with what I had. Okay, so that answers that question about the mistakes and the non-mistakes, all right? So we're going to wrap this now, and we will be back next week. We're going to talk about some more topics, and street photography is one we're going to talk about soon, because I have a method of doing street photography that I think is pretty unique. I had you come watch me do it one time. I haven't heard anyone discuss this particular method of doing it, and I think when we get Kevin back on eventually, we're going to talk about that a bit. And if there's other topics people want us to talk about, definitely, reach out to us on, Twitter, email. I mean, if you know our names, you can find us. It's 2013. It's very difficult to hide, how to find you these days. But my Instagram is John Ricard, JohnRicard. And if you're looking for Ray,
you can find me on. You can find me in the streets of New York, working or going to yoga, or just check out my site. All my contact information is there. www.raytamarra.com, and I'll answer the questions if I can, or answer it on the podcast, and just let us know so that we can share with you and have an ongoing discussion, because I definitely want to learn what you're talking about, so I can learn from you.
Right. And if nothing else, we've got the most honest podcast on iTunes and Stitcher now. Okay. So there we go. All right. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you soon.
Thanks.